Sometimes you need to suffer before you can surf. Let's talk about the surfer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing or debating The Surfer. But before we get into that, you already know what time it is. Movie recommendation time. So, guys, best recent thing that we've seen.
I'm going to go a little bit different to movie this week. A little bit different to series as well. So I watched Solo Leveling, which is an anime about these so-called hunters that have to go into these dangerous dungeons to sort of fend off the monsters that were in there before they attack the world that they're in. And there's different levels of these dungeons, and depending on what type of sort of hunter you are, will depend on what dungeon you're able to go into and fight in, and sort of then reap the rewards of. And it basically just follows the story of the person that's deemed the weakest hunter who goes into a dungeon. Something happens, and then it kind of awakens something within him, or he has a second awakening, and then he starts to kind of level up his power. So it's not kind of your typical thing that you'd watch, or what our community would probably watch, but it's just a cool anime, and I've kind of been getting a little bit more into anime since watching Dragon Ball Daima. I've kind of paid attention a little bit more to some animes, and that's just one that I had been paying attention to recently, and I don't think I'd watched anything else really of noteworthy. So that's my recommendation. If you're into anime, Solo Leveling, you've probably heard of it, and it's it's definitely a good watch.
And the entire thing operates on RPG logic, is my guess.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And how does that work out? Because I've never seen one of those, and I always wonder, does it actually turn into a real story? Or do the game aspects kind of detract from that?
I would say this one has not less of a focus on the story, but the story isn't sort of the main selling point of this. I would say it's more the character and his development and kind of his development and sort of how he's unlocking new skill sets and, continuing to sort of grow and improve himself, essentially. And I haven't completed it yet. I'm about sort of 5 or 6 episodes in. I wouldn't say there's a strong story there that would grab you and grip you, but it's just kind of just following this character.
A film which I was surprised about that I watched, which I think you guys should watch, was a film called The Assessment. It's a new film. Came out this year. It was really good. It's about a couple living in this type of dystopian future. Parenthood is pretty much supervised. So they go through some 7-day assessment. Pretty much the person that does the assessment with them decides whether or not they're fit to be parents or not. And let's just say the person that's doing the assessment makes them go through some crazy, sinister, dark, confusing tasks, and just the assessment is just a bit all messed up, and it makes you question kind of like the society that they're living in and the purpose for everything, like what the hell's going on and the messaging behind it as well. So I would definitely recommend The Assessment. It was surprisingly good, man. I was surprised.
Is it more about overpopulation, or is it about them being good parents?
It's definitely not about overpopulation, because there's two sides. There's I forgot what they refer to as the other side, but the other side is where pretty much, so if you live where they're living, where the parents are living, that's like the good society, or I wouldn't say the rich, but if you do, and I've basically forgot the criteria of each society. So there's one society which is good and one society which is bad. I think the bad one's pretty much the poor and how everyone's living there. But I forgot the criteria as in what puts you there. But you do get sent down if as punishment to that other society. So the society that they're living in, it feels very empty. It's where the couple was staying. It was it seemed like they were staying in some sort of desert, but the house was really nice. So yeah, it wasn't due to overpopulation. It was.
Is it just to make sure that they will be good parents, or
there was more to that? I completely forgot because that was a question that I was asking, what the hell was the whole point of the assessment? Even the person that was doing the assessment, she wants a child as well, and I forgot why they were making it. I forgot the main message. I'm gonna have to watch it again, but I would recommend it. It wasn't due to overpopulation. That's something I think I can guarantee on.
So I didn't watch it, but I saw it in, I think it's in Amazon Prime or something, and it just looked a bit like being about overpopulation, and that kind of triggered one of my pet peeves, where science fiction never updates its topics. Where 50 years ago we were concerned about overpopulation, now we're concerned about there not being enough children, right? Now the concern is that the birth rates are crashing, and that is messing up society, right? Because there's too many old people, not enough young people, and so on, right? I've never seen a science fiction story about that. Like, it's one of the big crises of our time, one of the many. And nobody has ever, I've never seen a sci-fi movie about this. About a world in which that has gone bad, or where this might lead. So that was kind of my first association when I saw the assessment, because normally if you need a license to have children, it's because there are too many children, right? Or too many people. But now that you say it's not about that, I might check it out actually, because it sounds like it's doing something different.
Yeah, we're going to check it out. Because I didn't mention nothing about overpopulation. I don't know if I was zoned out.
No, but for 50 years, science fiction has been talking about, like, Soylent Green is one of those, where 50 years ago, there were predictions about how there would be 20 billion people in the world, and the world would be overcrowded and resource depletion or whatever. And it's not happening, because it turns out that in every country, people stop having children when they industrialize, right? And science fiction has not caught up on that. And this stuff not being updated, and us telling stories about things that people 50 years ago were afraid of. It's kind of one of my big pet peeves in science fiction. And so I thought it was about that. Like, when I read the description and saw the pitch and all of that. But I'm glad to hear it's not.
Wait, I think I might be wrong. I think it might be. Sorry. I think it might be. Because as it started to come back to me, I think it might be. There was a scene where pretty much there was guests that came over and they were having a conversation amongst themselves. And I think they might have mentioned something around that subject matter. Okay. So I think it might be about overpopulation. Apologies. But I would still recommend to watch it, just in case it's not. But I would recommend it because it was still a good watch. And I understand where you're coming from. It's definitely something that's oversaturated. I do understand, but still. Just watch it again, please, and then let me know what you think. If you end up watching it, let me know what you think.
Yeah, so this has been quite the roller coaster. So I'll report next week to tell you what it's about.
Cool. Yeah, well, that's my recommendation.
All right, this week I watched If It's Tuesday, This Must Be Belgium, which is a 1969 comedy movie about this British tour guide who leads a group of American tourists on this whirlwind tour through Europe. So they visit like 9 countries in 18 days, going from London to Rome. Normally, I should not like this movie, right? Like, I like structure, I like theme, I like punchy to the point stories. And this is just a meandering mess for 2 hours, where we basically follow this group and each one has their little story, and they don't have very much to do with each other except kind of checking different boxes about cliches that Americans have about Europe and Europeans have about American tourists. It's like the World War II veteran who wants to go back to the places where, like, that he was in during the war. There's like this middle class couple that are going on their first ever big overseas vacation, and the husband is constantly talking about how everything is too expensive. And then there's another couple where they get separated and the wife gets on the wrong bus, and so she's stuck with this Japanese tour group for 2 weeks, and then they reunite at the very end, and then she comes back like in a kimono and having made friends all over Japan, and like it's completely ridiculous, and it's a lot of fun. It's like has a lot of heart, and I think because of this ensemble structure, if you don't like one character or don't like one of the stories, there's 5 more that you might like. And like the entire thing is just fun. It's just like, it's not especially funny, but it is just like a comfortable watch. There's a whole bunch of different stories in there that kind of, I like, it's almost like slice of life, where these different characters just have different reasons for going on this tour, and they have different reactions. Like, there's a scene where they try to order local food because they don't want to be dumb American tourists, and then they end up ordering the cheeseburger anyway for their various reasons. And like, it's stuff like this. It's 2 hours of that kind of thing, and it's a good time. It's just like, it's a comfortable, enjoyable, amusing watch. And sometimes that's all our movie needs to do.
Looks like it's time for the main event. The Surfer. Daniel, can you please do your thing? All
right, so The Surfer is a psychological thriller movie about this guy who is about to repurchase his childhood home, right? He had to move away when he was very young, and he's basically worked his entire life to be able to afford to buy this house back that his family lost when he was very young. And his fondest memory is living in this house and surfing at the beach. And so he returns to that area. He's about to close the deal on this house. And he shows his son essentially where he grew up, and he wants to share this experience with his son, right? And the son is not having it. He's completely uninterested. Like, the parents are getting divorced as well. There's a whole lot going on. And then they encounter the locals who are trying to scare them away. They don't want any outsiders at the beach. And this battle of will erupts between the father and the leader of the surfer group, and the entire thing becomes this psychological trip where the father basically gets very close to an existential crisis as he basically just tried to realize his dream. So what did we think of The Surfer?
I don't think I've been more angry at a movie than I have The Surfer. And not in a I'm emotionally engaged in the movie and I'm angry at what's happening type of thing. I'm angry that I had to sit through this type of movie type of angry.
I think that's my fault because I suggested this movie.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not that we had many other options.
I'll send you some chocolate next time we see each other.
Please. But honestly, it just wasn't my type of movie. And, you know, if it's something that you enjoy, fair play to you. But this was a struggle to sit through. I was just like there. At first, I was like, why are you still here in this situation? Why are you like in this car park or whatever? And I know the movie does its best to try to sort of justify the character's reasons for still being there. But the whole time I was just thinking, why have you not left? And that made me really struggle to get into the movie. And then it's quite unorthodox in the way it's trying to tell its story. It's very sort of kind of like ambiguous. There's a lot of hallucinations kind of going on. It's kind of, you know, pretty much, and I would say set in one location. I don't have problems with movies set in one location, but just the traditional sort of storytelling methods weren't quite here. It was just a jarring experience for me, and I get that, you know, people found sort of entertainment in some of the things that were kind of going on, or like grotesque by, you know, him drinking the water or possibly sort of eating the rat and stuff like that, and his conversations with the surfer. I just found it all to be a bit too boring and a bit sort of laborious to get through. I very rarely found much entertainment at all in this movie. I don't dislike Nicolas Cage, but I'm not let me go and see Nicolas Cage be Nicolas Cage, as it seems people are a fan of. That's not quite my thing. Even though I did kind of sort of appreciate him long legs. I did quite enjoy his performance there. But that's in an actual movie. That's in a movie that's, you know, got, you know, some type of semblance in this storytelling. But here, God. Yeah, this was rough, man. And if it wasn't for us recording this, I probably would have walked out about 20 minutes in the movie. And it doesn't help that I didn't know what I was going into, because again, when we do some of these unknown movies, I try not to look at the trailer, and I try to kind of go in and just experience the movie. And at first, I thought The Surfer was going to be some type of like action movie similar to The Beekeeper, which is the movie that I previously hated the most. I think this movie has now overtaken The Beekeeper on that front. But
I was going to say the trailer makes it look a bit like a revenge thriller, right? And it's not.
Yeah,
I didn't watch the trailer, so again, I went in completely blind. I was like, okay, I'm going to go in the cinema. I didn't read anything, didn't see any trailers, didn't experience anything, and I was like, let me just sort of see what the story is. Very quickly, I kind of saw what it was doing, and very quickly I was like, I'm not on board, and I need to get out of the cinema as soon as possible. But I couldn't. I suffered through all of it, and here we are now talking about it. So that's my thoughts.
I'm 50-50 on this one, but I'm more so positive than negative. I think the issue that I had with it is the way that it was presented to me, and that's mainly with the trailer. So I thought I was gonna get, like Daniel said, like a revenge type of get back film. But so I was like, just when I was watching the film, I was just waiting for that Rambo moment where he was gonna go bat shit crazy and just do a mad one and, you know, just plan and beat up a lot of them. But it never really came. No, even it didn't come. So yeah, I think that's just the only disappointing thing that I could think about. And there's other stuff as well. I was trying to understand, like, because when it comes to like just the whole erratic behavior from Nicolas Cage, I wasn't surprised with that, and the stylistic approach from the filmmakers when it comes to this film, because it's a Nicolas Cage film. That's something which I was expecting, especially from the trailer. It kind of gives you that feeling as well. So that's something that I was preparing myself for. So I didn't necessarily have an issue with that, even though I do kind of have like an issue with movies that are just artsy garbage. And this one, at times, it was... So I was confused about kind of like his obsessive nature. And I was trying to find out, like, I was trying to see if like his past provided any insight to why he's behaving the way that he is in the present time and why he's still staying at the beach. So I was trying to, like, even the flashbacks, I was just seeing, okay, what is it exactly that's making him stay? And I still haven't figured it out yet. I do know obviously there's a connection with his father and the way that his father died, and I'm just trying to see why he's just so persistent on not going home and just staying there, and, and getting that house. So that's something which hopefully Daniel will be able to explain to us. Those two issues were my issues, but I didn't really get that kind of like revenge, get back type of film, and I was trying to understand what was keeping him there. That's the two issues. However, overall, there were really good parts. I enjoyed it. I think they kind of like the torment kind of went longer than it should have. That's another critique. However, seeing him slowly become the homeless man was something where I was like, okay, is there like social commentary behind that? Are they trying to tell us something? Because that was kind of like interesting to see, because he was becoming the homeless man. Like, he was becoming homeless. I was thinking, oh crap, is he really at times I was thinking to myself, is he the homeless man? It made me wonder if it was a thing where they're making him look crazy, or if he's actually crazy and he cracked due to obviously his past and obviously what happened with his father, and if that's kind of like, I didn't know how it was gonna end, but it ended up being his reality ended up being a reality. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So that kind of got me lost again. So, but yeah, so just kind of like there were definitely parts where I was enjoying myself, especially with the Beach Boys and the Surfer Boys, whatever they're called. The way that there was a surfer cult, so that was interesting to see as well. So I liked it. Overall. It was just I had issues with it, but I liked it overall.
So this movie kind of had a kind of an uphill battle with me. So I like straightforward literary stories, like so I don't like too much allegory. I like it when what's happening on screen is what's actually happening, and there's a thematic subtext and all of that. But what I'm seeing is what's really going on. Unlike a lot of people, I'm not that big a Nick Cage fan, because a lot of the time he's just eccentric for its own sake. A lot of the time, there's been more than one movie where I was really on board with it, and then like Cage, gets very Cagean towards the end, and it's all a bit much maybe. But I was really riveted by this movie pretty much from the start. There were just one or two different little places where the movie was close to losing me. But I think this movie is has a really tight script. It entirely rests on this one performance by Nick Cage, pretty much. I think it actually says something interesting. It's not one of those messages you've heard 1,000 times. It's actually a little bit, there's actually something different going on. Overall, I enjoyed it a lot more than I actually thought I would. Like, once something becomes like a dream sequence or like a fever dream, I'm checked out. It's just not my thing. And like the entire middle of this movie is basically that. But then it comes together in the end, and it's very, very deliberate in what it does, and it's very clear and very effective in what it does. And so I ended up really enjoying myself in spite of that. Also, shout out to the fine people at Cineworld Bexley Heath, who kept the lights on, even though I was the only person who showed up for this movie. That's never happened to me before. I saw the watchers with one other guy, which was awkward enough. But here I was literally the only person in the room. And that was a very weird experience, where I just it's just hard to describe. Just being alone in a cinema, and there's nobody, and then you walk out and there's like an entire hallway and there's also nobody, and then you have to walk like down the entire hallway and turn around two corners, and then you find another human being. It's a really weird experience. But anyway, that's got nothing to do with the movie, but it just made the movie even more, made my experience even more surreal and memorable. I'm definitely not going to forget that anytime soon. But yeah, like overall, I really liked it. It basically overcame all my biases and all my hangups, and gave me something I think it's going to stick with me for a while. So let's talk about it.
The question I'm about to ask might be the most important question I'm going to ask today. What is the movie about?
So I think it's about belonging and success, because the entire story is about the surfer, and it's interesting that he never gets a name, right? Actually, does he ever say his name? Like, does anybody ever say his name in the movie? I don't think so, right? Like, in the credits, he's just given as the surfer. The deal is that he has worked his entire life to accumulate enough money to buy back his childhood home. And in order to do that, he has to kind of get the approval of the people who are already there. And they have to accept him as one of them, right? So this entire movie is a hazing ritual. Everybody, from the cop to the estate agent to the locals to, the bank, like everybody is in on it, right? Everybody is conspiring to put him through this hell to see if he has what it takes to stick it out. And then he earns his keep in the end. And this is represented by him joining the group, right? He's accepted by the group. He's baptized, right? There's an extra baptism going on, right? He's then one of them. And as a result, he's allowed to serve. So this is an analogy for selling out. It's an analogy for living on other people's terms your entire life. And then at the end of it, you get a retirement where you can live on your own terms. But at that point, your life's over. You've not lived your life according to what you would have liked it to be because other people were kind of keeping you from that, right? And the surfer is the guy who is kind of like at the crossroads, right? This is what he wants, but he doesn't want to sell out. But he cares so much about getting this house and about being able to surf that he's basically putting up with anything. Like anything is, like there's nothing that's too cruel, too harsh, too extreme for him to just keep pushing until he gets to his goal, because that's the only thing he's ever wanted. If he doesn't get it, then his life has no purpose. He spent decades of his life working to get this money. He's ruined his marriage. He's strained his relationship to his son, all just for the goal of being able to surf. And so if he now walks away from this, and this kind of it goes towards the question of why doesn't he go away? Why doesn't he drive home and lawyer up? And like, why is he doing all of this? And the reason is that it's a metaphor for paying your dues and selling out. The old man, right, who is in his fever dream is turning into, right? There are several. He not only ends up living in the abandoned car, and he's not just turning into basically a homeless person, right? He loses his shoes, his clothes are dirty, he loses his phone, he scavenges through like the garbage for food, right? He's turning into this old man, right? And the old man is the guy who never sold out, and as a result, he is a failed existence. And society views him as not one of them. That is really exemplified in the barbecue scene where the surfer sits in this car, in the old man's car, right? And he's like this close to the edge, right? He's about to crack. And then there's this barbecue where the rich, pretty people all show up. And that is why I don't think this is an analogy for toxic masculinity. Like, that's part of it, right? But the people who show up to the barbecue are families, right? Husbands, wives, children, grandparents, grandchildren, friends and family. Like, everybody shows up and they're having the time of their lives, and they're all beautiful and rich, and they have all the food and drinks that they could ever want, and they go surfing and whatever, right? And so they've made it. They have all the things we would want in life, right? But they did it by selling out, and they did it by being part of the system. And the whole thing goes so far that you basically cannot function without being part of that system, right? Because that is why the cop is so corrupt, right? So at one point he calls the police because technically what they're doing is illegal. Not only are they assaulting people, but chasing people away from the beach is not legal, right? But the police shows up, and not only is he part of the group, right, and covers for the surfers, but he also gaslights the surfer into, is this even your real car? And are you drunk? Have you been drinking? Stuff like this, right? He's constantly trying to discredit the surfer, right? Even though legally he's totally in the right. And then the bank and the estate agent constantly keep throwing up additional boundaries. Once he has been accepted by the group, all of that goes away. Like there's literally like the bank manager is at the campfire. He says, "Yeah, I'll take care of it tomorrow morning. You'll have your house," and he does, right? And it kind of goes on like this. So this entire thing is an allegory for basically what you have to do to kind of succeed in life, which is give up your autonomy and your dignity and work and live on other people's terms. And at the very end, you get the reward that you wanted in the first place. And maybe you don't even get that.
But how did that link with his father, though? What happened to his father, and why they kept on showing it?
His father tried to do the same thing and he didn't make it. He cracked and he checked out. That's because my understanding at least of it was that the surfer's father tried to go his own way, and he tried to not be part of the system, and he tried to kind of be true to himself. The pressure of that just got too much. The old man, right, the bum, and his father are kind of cautionary tales of what can happen if you resist too much. If you fight and don't win, that is what happens to you.
Okay.
Because there's a whole bunch of lines, that reinforces this, right? So for one, the surfers behave like a cult, right? One of the things cults do is that they kind of strip you of your humanity and your dignity, while at the same time showering you with affection and validation. And the idea is to break you down, and then they rebuild you in a way that they control. And you've given up your autonomy and your free will and all of that, right? You get what you want, which in the case of cults is typically belonging and purpose and acceptance. but it comes at the cost of your personhood, essentially. Like, that's how cults behave, and that is why the surfers behave like a cult in this, because in order to get what you want, in order to be able to surf, you have to become like them. And they control who gets to clear that hurdle and who doesn't. And so they make the rules and they enforce it, and they enforce it in a way that benefits them. There's lines in this like, sometimes you have to suffer before you can surf. Like this whole idea that you have to pay your dues, you have to put in your time, you have to earn it. But the people who are deciding whether or not you've earned it are nobody special. They just happen to be in the right place. And they get to be the gatekeepers. Right? Yeah. So I think that's what this is going for.
Okay, but the film's portrayal of the concept of home, is that something else that they were trying to, like, there was a message behind that? Because obviously he wanted that house. I understand that, like, the allegory for that is obviously all you just said in terms of, like, it's kind of like selling your soul for success and what it looks like selling out, right? But isn't there anything else when it comes to, like, the way that home was kind of, like, shown in this film? Do you think that was the main message?
So the house is basically nice things in life, right? That and surfing, I think. So he wants the house because that is, like, his one memory of being at peace and being happy and being able to do what he wants. I don't think it's necessarily about home, because he already has a home. He's not lived in Australia for decades, right? It's where he was born, but he spent his entire life in the US and is now coming back for the first time. And you can argue, like, what if this is really home? But, like, he's chasing a memory in the first place, right? Or an emotion. And the emotion is happiness and being at peace and just things being right. Right, that is what he's trying to achieve. And I think that maps to this idea that you put in 20 years, 30 years of your work, and then you get the house in the suburbs and, you know, with a garden and a car and your annual vacation and stuff like this, right? This picture of what a successful life is like. It's not necessarily just about having a home or, like, being home. It's about having made it. You basically spent your entire life chasing this. And by the time you've reached it, you may have lost sight of what it is you wanted in the first place. I think that's what this is saying. And that is the significance of the home. It's not really about getting the home because he has the money to buy it, right? And the only reason he can't is because of the gatekeepers, right? Like, on paper, like, this should not be the entire... I think that is part of what you bounced off of Hervey, right? Is that this, on paper, this should be a non-issue. He has the money. Why doesn't he just drive home and sort it out? Why does he have to pick this fight with these surfers? And the answer is that he cannot walk away, having been defeated like this, getting this close to what he has wanted all of these years, and then just shrugging and walking away from it. He's incapable of doing this. And I think that the plot does a decent job of justifying this, why he's so fixated and why he just doesn't walk away. The only point where I didn't buy it was in the first night, he waits for the police, and as a result, his battery is drained. He needs to wait for somebody to come along to help him to recharge. And at that point, he should have left, right? The fact that he then stays around for another day, and then his car gets stolen, or at least he believes it gets stolen. That's a whole other thing. I think that's the part where the plot doesn't quite work. For everything else, he could walk away. Even after he's lost his phone and his shoes and his car, he could still walk home. But he doesn't. He stays, and that's because he cannot walk away from the goal.
Because at first with the home, I thought it had something to do with his identity. I thought, as in, like, kind of him giving up the home in a way is giving up as well his kind of, like, sense of identity. Because obviously there's so much history in that, and obviously with what happened to his father, I thought, okay, so maybe it's kind of like if he gives up on the home, he's gonna kind of, like, his dad was defeated by society, so in a way he's being defeated by obviously society in terms of, like, the whole surfer. So that's how I was trying to kind of, like, find the parallel, the parallel. Hopefully you can see what I'm trying to say in terms of, like, obviously that was his identity and there was a loss of identity. At first he wasn't intentionally trying to find acceptance, but it ends off being like that. It ends up turning into that. So that's why I think I got a bit confused, because he wasn't seeking their acceptance, but it's made it seem at the end that he was really. So, but he wasn't, because obviously he's selling out. So he needs to sell out in order to get what he wants, which you said is obviously to surf. I feel like there's a lot going on, as in, like, there's a lot of messages going on. It's just, for me, in my head, it's just a bit convoluted. So that's what I'm just trying to,
there's a whole bunch of detail and lots of lines that really reinforce a couple of ideas, right? He never gets to the point where he wants to be like Skelly, right? He despises Skelly every minute of it, right? I don't think he ever gets to the point where he actually changes. It's more that he realizes and accepts that he has to play nice, he has to adapt, he has to conform. Otherwise, he will not achieve his goal. which is to surf.
Could you say, well, I mean, I know surfing was one of his goals, but wasn't the other in this movie as well about almost trying to like rebuild his family as well? Because he keeps kind of like talking about being excited about showing his son, the house. When he was like speaking to his wife or ex-wife, he was talking about how he's like so close to buying the perfect house and that they can then be a happy family in that home. But all the while, whilst he's been hyper fixated on, trying to buy this house, is that he's kind of neglected the relationships that he has with the people around him. And it's almost that sort of false mindset of, if such and such happens in this relationship, maybe we'll be happy whilst ignoring all the problems that you have. Like, for example, when, people feel like, oh, if we just have a baby, then that will solve all the problems that we have. But in reality, all the problems that you have are still there. And, you just have this like idea of this end destination or this end goal, which, it seems like the surfer had in this movie, where he had the end goal of, okay, once I have this house, I would have achieved it. And then this would be, what kind of brings the family together. But by that point, it's too late. Well, it's not clear, because like it seemed like his relationship with his son was like somewhat okay, and they served together at the end. But I mean, for his wife, that ex-wife, I mean, that was completely burnt. She'd already gotten pregnant with another man's baby as well. So
I think this conversation, the phone call he has with the wife, right? So they seem to be divorced or separated, but he has been under the delusion that they can still get back together, and all he has to do to fix it is to achieve the goal, and then he will be a winner, then he will have succeeded, and then she will come back to him. I'm not sure if they mention divorce papers, but she tells him that she's pregnant, right? That is kind of the finality of it, right? That is where he actually despairs. That is where it sets in that there's no salvaging this relationship. But like you say, up until this point, he has been so focused on achieving his goal, and part of that is that he thinks that will make everything right. That she will come back to him, and there will be one big happy family. And you said the relationship to the son is actually not that strained. It's pretty terrible, I thought. Like, they do surf together at the end. Like, throughout the movie, he keeps trying to get the son excited about surfing, and the guy does not care. Like, he doesn't care about the house, he doesn't care about living there, he doesn't care about surfing. And towards the very end, he gets through. But at that point, a lot has happened, right? But throughout the movie, the surfer keeps trying to salvage or reinvigorate his relationship with his son, and the son is just not having it, like outright calling him a loser and stuff like this, right? Or like just rejecting him in any way possible, right?
I agree with you, is that the relationship was obviously strained throughout most of the movie. I was just more kind of referring to what the movie was trying to say about, that ideal sort of situation, because like I said, is that it seemed at the end of the movie he'd achieved what he wanted to achieve in terms of, okay, like they're going to sort the house and this and the other, even though there was a whole incident with the homeless man towards the end. But it seemed like once he'd accepted and been sort of accepted into this cult, was that his relationship with his son had progressed more than what it was at that, in the movie. Of course, it wasn't, the most perfect relationship, but it seemed to have progressed a little bit. And I'm not sure what the movie was trying to say.
I think the son did buy into the idea that what the surfers were doing was kind of normal. Like, that is how people should behave. Not necessarily their cruelty, but just their clique, their club. The son did seem to buy into that. And once the father is not as defiant and is not as combative with everybody, that's where the son warms up to him again.
One more question. Do you think obviously the setting was intentional, as in like, ports of, just like the Australian coast? Did it kind of play into like the whole psychological state of things? Especially because I think obviously like the heat, right? And obviously the way the portrayal of the heat, the way that was done, it does play on the whole protagonist's perception of reality. So that's pretty obvious. But do you think obviously them basing it in Australia also was like there was something behind that, like the message behind that? Because I remember, Daniel, you mentioned before how this is kind of like this is what like surfing culture kind of is.
The thing about the surfers, I looked up some reviews just to see what people were saying, and I accidentally ended up in the surfing subreddit. And so I found like half the reviews I found were by actual surfers who went into this wanting to get a surfing movie and being upset that it wasn't. But one of the things they liked was the depiction of surfing culture, like this whole localism thing. Like people just claim local beaches, and terrorize anybody who they believe doesn't belong there so that they can have their own private beach. That seems to be a thing that really happens. I've seen people say that this happens, especially in California. I think the reason this is in Australia is, number one, it's like a fish out of water thing because he's not been there for decades. He doesn't have as many roots and he probably doesn't have many friends. His only connection, he calls, is like his broker. Second one is you get both the heat and Christmas at the same time. That's the other thing. You don't get this in California. December is like the hottest part of the year in Australia, right? And I lived in Australia for 3 years of my life, went to university there. And Christmas in summer is a bit weird. Like it's just not what you're used to. I think that leads to another level of alienation, I think, where it's just not normal, right? Like this is not what you expect from this is a Christmas movie, isn't it? Right? Yeah. It's quite literally about Christmas and about the values of Christmas and family and charity and kindness and reflecting on what's important in life. Setting it in Australia means you have this very dark atmosphere, right? Everybody's very cruel, it's very harsh, but it's also very bright, right? Normally a story like this would happen in more darker environments, right? And this is as bright as it gets, but actually the brightness and the heat is oppressive. Right, it's like a ticking clock by itself. It limits how long he can do this, right? Like he's like with every hour that passes and he doesn't get water and he doesn't get shade and stuff like this, it's another push towards the edge, right? And then this entire thing happens during Christmas, which is another ticking clock. First of all, he has to close this before Christmas because everybody goes on holiday for a week. So if he doesn't do this before Christmas, the deal falls through. Second of all, he wants to present like this is supposed to be a Christmas present to his son especially, but also to his wife, and he gives up on that after the call where she reveals that she is with another guy, right? And Christmas is supposed to be the time where you think about others. And here he's only thinking about himself, but the other people are also just thinking about themselves. Like this entire movie lives very much from the escalating tension, like where it starts off fairly normal, and then slowly the movie strips away every layer and every safety cushion and every comfort the surfer has, and by the end he's kind of just reduced to this fever dream. And the fact that it happens at Christmas, that it happens in summer, that it happens in a place that he doesn't know very well, all of that is just maximizes the pressure on him until he almost cracks, and he gets very close to cracking. All of these pieces seem kind of optional, right? None of these seem really essential, right? Like the goal could be something else, like the location could be something else, but by picking all of these things, it kind of all converges into this spiraling out of control that is all in his head, because he just, like, it honestly reminded me of the last time I took a train in Germany, because it just starts off very simple, and then one thing goes wrong, and then another thing goes wrong, and then people give you crap for no good reason, and then you get penalized for not following the rules, except the rules are broken, and you cannot, like, you cannot follow them, and then before you know it, you're 8 levels deep into the escalation, and you just want to go forward. I honestly had stress flashbacks to the last time I tried to take a train in Germany. It's that bad. So
imagine what taking a train like in Germany in Christmas would have been like.
Actually, summer is worse, because every summer they're surprised that it gets warm, and then all the air conditioning breaks, and everybody like the air conditioning and half the carriages break, and then everybody has to herd into the half where the air conditioning still works, and everybody's miserable and angry and cranky, and the staff doesn't know what to do because they can't do anything. So summer is actually worse than Christmas. But anyway, tangent aside, the question here I think is, are we on board with what the surfer is doing, right? And I think, Hervé, you weren't, for the most part. But the reason I was is because I think what's really relatable about this is like when you just have one of those days where there's just one instance of crap after another, and each one individually, maybe, or at least the first 5 are not that bad. By themselves, you would have rolled with it, but together, it's just too much. And in the end, the simplest things seem impossible. That was like, I can recount like 6 different instances where I was in that kind of situation. And this movie really evoked that kind of experience, I thought. Even though it gets kind of cartoonish and over the top and heightened stylized, but just this perception of, like, you know, and another insult to injury. When he tries to get a coffee, it should be easy. And there's no reason why the guy's selling him the coffee. So what happens is, he tries to buy a coffee, and he's got his debit card on his phone, right? Or his credit card on his phone. And he's run out of battery. And so he can't pay. He just asks the guy, hey, can I just charge my phone and then I'll pay? And the guy just gives him crap for no reason. And it turns out that's because it's part of this bigger story of like the entire system is kind of like engaged in gatekeeping, right? And the guy is like the coffee shop guy is in on it. Like this should be easy, right? He should just let him just charge his phone for 10 minutes and then he can pay, and then nobody's lost anything, right? He's not like he talks about how electricity isn't free, but he's not paying the electricity bill of that shop. Like he just works there, right? Probably. So it's like like most of these things, like by the end of it, we're kind of at the point where we're in outright fistfights and Nicolas Cage is stuffing a dead rat into a guy's mouth and trying to drown him on the beach, right? Like at that point, or like when they brand each other with this wave symbol, like it gets quite out there towards the end, but the first 10 steps are pretty small, right? Like there are things that could go wrong for anybody at any time. Like he doesn't necessarily do anything wrong, at least initially, right? You can point to, okay, this is at this point he should have left or whatever, right? At least in the first half, when things are relatively normal, he's trying to do the right thing, right? He tries to reason with the cop and he tries to reason with the teenagers who are harassing the bum. It's like a boiling, it's like a frog boiling thing. Each individual step is pretty normal and pretty small and pretty innocuous. And then by the end of it, suddenly you have a cult branding people. It's like, how did we get here?
I just think the settings, like obviously when you mention Christmas, I wouldn't say it made his decisions justifiable, but it adds more context and it definitely makes it more understanding as to why the obsession was there in the first place. You know what's actually, I actually feel like a lot of his, like a lot of the struggles that were happening weren't, I don't want to say self-inflicting, but it did feel like that sometimes. And that's why I feel like it resonated with me, is because like a lot of the times when things are going bad, it generally starts off from a decision that you've made. And it kind of did feel like that with Nicolas Cage character, because sometimes, especially with the phone, like the coffee situation, even though that was another thing that was adding to his torment from obviously the locals, it was still kind of his fault because, his phone wasn't charged. And if he left that place earlier, then he wouldn't have gone through that situation. So it was like a lot of the stuff that was a situation where I could relate with. It was self-inflicted. And a lot of, like you said, when there's a domino effect of just disaster after disaster, it kind of does stem from a decision which you have made. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. At the very beginning, he could have just gone home.
One question. How does it make sense that when he bought the pizza off of the pizza delivery guy, overpriced for £100 or whatever, and he already knows that there's these people...
$100 Australian dollars.
$100 Australian dollars, yeah, which is about £50 or something along the lines. But how does it make sense for him to leave the pizza outside of his car, go to the toilet, take his shoes off and clothes to go and take a dump in the toilet, and then he loses his surfboard and the pizza gets thrown on the floor? It was just like stuff like that. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like, why is that happening?
At that point, you say, why are you not just locking your door? Like, even if they steal your surfboard, they can't break into the car, or if they do, they have to break into the car.
Yeah.
At that point, it seems avoidable. But at the same time, like, if you are in that kind of situation and you're stressed and you're annoyed and you're tired and you're thirsty, you start making mistakes. I don't know that justifies taking off your shoes in the very filthy public toilet, but the entire thing is about like a person's mind unraveling, right? And being ground down until he barely perceives reality. I cut it a little bit of slack, but yeah, you're right that scene is not the strongest.
I think for me is I just didn't enjoy watching this man just get beat down for the whole experience, for the whole time. I don't know. There's for me there isn't anything enjoyable in watching it. Actually, I wouldn't say that, because I wouldn't say that, because something like the first Joker, where you see a man that's like kind of like down on his luck and society is against them, and then you see how they react to it, was very compelling. And obviously they completely butchered it in Joker 2. But here I just had nothing to grab onto at all, and I was just watching a man make mistake after mistake and be in an unfortunate situation, and just have things go wrong, and just being like threatened and this, that, and the other, and just essentially be a loser, like his son said. And to me, there was just nothing to sort of grab onto, and there was nothing to sort of root for him to sort of reestablish himself, or like come out of like whatever he was going through. And again, maybe this movie wasn't trying to have that. Maybe the movie wasn't that wasn't the point of this type of movie. But for me, it's just where I was being lost in the film. And again, it's some of it's just a preference thing. Some of it's just, something's just not my style, and I can admit that this isn't my style. The way that they decided to approach it, it's just a tough watch to just see a man, for however long this movie was, just get beat down on for the whole time.
Yeah, I can agree with that, because it did get to that point. I was just, like I said, I was just waiting for that point where he's actually going to just fight back, and they gave glimpses of him fighting back, but it just wasn't enough. So I was like, oh, okay, so we're just watching continuous torment. So I was like, okay, that's what I was having a bit of an issue with, because like I said, I was looking forward to the Rambo moments, but it didn't come. But
yeah, I mean, you're either on board with this or not, right? And I found myself being on board with it because I thought it takes you on an emotional journey, right? You can not like it, you can like not be convinced by it or something, but it's there, right? Like this entire movie is about his perception and about the escalation and this downward spiral and just him kind of being pushed to the brink. It is true that he could have walked fairly, like, at several points early on, but I think the movie justifies why he didn't. Like it explains why he cares about this and why he doesn't see an alternative and why he cannot simply walk away from it. It's not just stubbornness, it's not just greed or whatever. It is actually like, I'm so close. Like I've worked for this for 30 years. I'm this close. And this will fix everything. And a couple of jerks are not going to screw me out of what is mine anyway. None of the things he wants are really unreasonable, right? What the surfers are doing is completely unreasonable and illegal and immoral. And there's no point at which you can kind of see their point. Right? They just want this because they can and because they're dominant and because they can get away with it. But there's no point where they have a legitimate interest.
Takeaways from the ending. How did you interpret it?
In the ending, the surfer and the son, I have basically joined the gang, right? And as a reward, they are allowed to surf, right? And then the bum shows up and basically holds them and the leader hostage, right? Basically at gunpoint. And he actually, like, I think he lets one go and he shoots another one, and then he gets close to actually shooting Skelly, the leader, right? And that is where the surfer the surfer takes his son and kind of just runs towards the ocean, right? And basically, so the bum lets them go because they convince him that the surfer's not the bad guy, right? And he focuses on Skelly, and then the surfer kind of runs with his son towards the ocean, and he says to the son, "Let the rip take you out." Meaning just go with it and don't look back, meaning like don't pay attention to what we had to do to get to this point. To me, like, this is kind of, if this entire movie is basically about selling out in order to belong, then he is somebody who kind of weaseled his way through. Basically, he almost sold out, but he never quite did, and he never actually gave up what he actually wanted, which is connection with his son and getting to surf. And now he's basically willing to do that at any cost. Like, he's watching a guy be shot in the head because that's what it takes for him to get what he wants. And he could stop the bum, right? Like he could at least try, or he could try to reason with him. But he says, no, not my problem. Like, I'm here to surf and I'm going to surf. And Skelly is the problem in the first place. So no compassion here. And I think that makes it cold, but also at that point he is so exhausted, and Skelly has kind of pushed him so far that I was totally on board with the surfer doing this.
Yeah, and it also kind of tells you that obviously reaching the top comes with blood as well. Obviously, I wouldn't have said that before, obviously, everything that you just revealed in terms of like, the meaning of the meaning of the film. I'm just thinking of it now. It's like, okay, obviously it comes at a price. Obviously, at the price a lot of the times is blood. But the ending, when obviously the guy took his own life as well, to be fair, it made sense, because obviously he couldn't have escaped his, obviously the homeless guy wouldn't have been able, obviously it would have been prison for him. So that kind of did make sense. But
he already lost everything, right? He lost his son, he lost his dog, and now he's taking revenge. And that's all he ever wanted. He has no other reason for living. He has nowhere to go. He's got nobody to go back to. Skelly has taken everything from him, and now he's taken revenge. And now that that's done, there's nothing left to do, and so he shoots himself.
But that scene there as well kind of told me, like, it was like he was kind of seeing himself, what Nicolas Cage character could have become, or could have happened to him. Yeah, so that's why I was like, oh crap, that was like he was watching himself in a way. He was just watching an alternate reality.
It's more than that. So Skelly, his father, and the bum are all possible ways he could end up, and he chooses a fourth way. But he does it by walking over corpses, right? He does it by not caring, by not being a good person. He's doing it by by simply just pursuing his goal in any way he can, and he does what he needs to do, and then he seizes the opportunity when it comes up. And I don't think it makes him a good person, but it makes him realistic in a way, right? Because he basically just I don't even know that this maps to a real world analogy or like a situation. Like it's more like he played the game for as much as he had to, and then he got out, and he's not looking back. He doesn't care about what happens to the people who tortured him for all this time, right? There's no noble hero moment where he then goes, Skelly has tortured me this entire time, but you are going too far. Like, I'm not gonna let you shoot this guy because it's wrong. He just says, not my problem. I'm gonna go surf. That does not make him a hero, but it does make him understandable and human.
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything else to say before we go off to last thoughts?
I think you started off very negative. Have I changed anything, like any perspective, or is this just not your thing?
It's just not my thing. I understand that it had, its themes and its, stories it was trying to tell in this, and the parallels between the surfer and the homeless man, this and the other. But it's just not packaged in a way that's palatable to me in any way, shape, or form. So once we're done here, we're wiping this from my memory. I will never remember it again until we get to the end of the year and we discuss our top 10 worst movies of the year, and this will be very much right up there.
I was going to say, I'm going to put it in my top 3, and you put it in your worst 3, and then we're going to fight.
And then we'll have that debate that Jonathan's been asking for a couple of weeks.
Cool, guys. Let's end off with our thoughts.
I guess if it's your thing, then yeah, go for it. Go enjoy this movie. For me, it just doesn't tick any of the boxes that I would want when looking for a movie. I guess maybe so on the themes and sort of the kind of like metaphors aspect of it, but again, not done in a way that's like packaged that I can sort of digest and enjoy in any way, shape, or form. So I hate to be so harsh on the movie and so harsh on people's work, but it just hit me the wrong way. Completely the wrong way. And I grew more angry with the movie the more I realized that I couldn't escape it, pretty much. And now we're at this point.
Which is on theme, I think.
Yeah. Maybe there's a parallels where I can escape it. I had the options to. I had the options to. I had choices I could have made.
You could have walked away at any point, but you didn't.
At any point, but I didn't. I was committed. to this review,
the goal.
Even though I don't think I contributed too much. I think something kind of like Daniel carried this for us, but I didn't have too much to say about this one anyway. So that's all good. I will give this a 1 out of 10. I will never watch this again.
Oh crap! Oh, I was not expecting 1 out of 10. Well, overall for me, I think I would see this in a better light in terms of like I understand the movie more. I don't have much to say besides I had a good experience. I was, like I said, it's a Nicolas Cage movie, so you kind of know what to expect from a Nicolas Cage movie. So just add this to his, catalog of wacky films, because that's exactly what it was. Yeah, good experience. Would I recommend? I'd say wait for until it comes on streaming. For me, to be honest, I'm gonna give this one a 6 out of 10.
So for me, going in, this movie did not tick very many boxes. But this is like the new poster child for you have to judge a movie based on what it wants to do and then see if it does that and see if you like it. I ended up liking it. I do find the character stuff, the thematic stuff, the performances compelling, even though normally this would not necessarily be my kind of movie. I like how it's an small original story that is just really weird. Like this does not fit in. Like, good luck to anybody having to market this, right? It's not, and I think that's why the trailer makes it seem a bit more like a revenge thriller than it really is, because like, how do you market this, right? Like, and who do you market this to? And I like that movies like this get made, and I'm sorry they're going to lose a bunch of money on this, but I enjoyed it, and 100% of the people in my theater enjoyed it, which was me. And I think honestly, like, this is just a fun movie. Like, this is one of those movies that I don't think I will watch again, but I'm glad I have watched it. So for that reason, I give it 4 kookaburras.
Hi guys, thank you very much for tuning into today's discussion.
If you are unable to escape our review this time around, and maybe you found some pleasure in what we were talking about, then tell a friend. And if you were living in a nightmare and you had to sit through all of this and you hated every minute of it and it was progressively getting worse at each moment, tell an enemy. We are the Eye of the Storm podcast.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. We'll catch you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye bye.